Welcome back
Thank you.
to Real Talk with Realtors and real people.
And real people.
About real things. And yeah, so we have Stacy Jones back. Are you still Stacy Jones?
I'm actually Stacy Dunn.
Dunn.
Yeah,
That's what I thought.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Stacy Dunn.
But you can call me whatever you want.
Things. Stacy Jones Dunn. And I felt very inspired by the last episode of you talking about flipping and investing.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of our listeners, I mean, I know a lot of my friends listen to it and they're first time home buyers and they're interested in real estate and interested in how to build wealth. So we kind of started talking about that before we started podcasting just now. And so I wanted to ask you more about what's your personal story, like what inspirational story can you tell about your early investing days and like how you got started?
Yeah. Well, I had parents who didn't have a lot of money, but were definitely believers in real estate. And they bought rental properties and really encouraged me to buy a home. And back when I was buying a home, it was more unusual for a single woman to be buying a home. So that was kind of at age 27. It was like 98 or 99. And so that was definitely unusual. At the time, I didn't have a secure job, which lending practices were a little different back then. But I had saved money, and my parents loaned me half the money and for my down payment and went on title with me so that I could qualify for the loan.
Okay.
And then a year later, I had paid them back that money and refinanced the house because at that time, I think when I started, it was 11 or 12%. And that was at the beginning of the decline in interest rates. So every year they just kept going down. So it was advantageous for me to refinance just a year later, get them off title, get a better interest rate. And that kind of started me on the property trajectory.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how'd you buy your second home? Because, okay, if you're going to buy a primary, at the time, did you only need to put 3% down still, or was it more than that?
No, I put
You did
20% down. Yeah.
Because now if you buy an investment property, you have to put, it depends, but 15 to 25% down, which of, a $400,000 house is so hard for people.
Yeah.
For anybody.
So I had taken, and I kind of did this, of course, again, lending practices were a little different, but I had refinanced my home as an owner occupied, pulled money out of it.
Cash out refi.
Use that money as a down payment for the next house, purchase the next house. I think at that time, interest rates were changing so dramatically that I think I did a cash out refi on that house, bought the next house, sold that house, lived in a rental for a couple months, bought the next house, really used, I was single and then married, no kids. And I moved, 5 times in the course of 6.5 years.
I was gonna say, you have to put in the work.
Yeah,
like,
you do.
You got to keep moving.
Yeah,
if you're gonna
and that
buy
was with a
those.
full-time job. But then I finally decided, hey, you know what? I think this is making quite a bit of money. And I hate my job. And so I'm going to do this full time. And
what were you doing?
I was in pharmaceutical sales.
Oh,
it was terrible.
I thought about that in college.
It was awful. And then took a break. And when we moved to Chico, started having kids. And then after I had the third one in 2011, we were living in Mansion Park. And I was like, I really want to get back into this. And I really want to work. And so I kept bugging my next door neighbor, like, hey, if you ever want to sell your house, And finally she was like, you know what? I want to sell my house. And I was like, great. So I bought it.
Wow, you'd make a good realtor.
Yeah, flipped it. And that was, and I was out there with like the baby backpack and we live right next door. So I had a baby monitor. So I had a lot of freedom, flipped that house. And then that kind of got me started back in real estate as an investment and as a profession.
Yeah. So what were you doing between when you sold the home in Davis and first flipped in Chico?
So we bought our quote unquote forever home where we lived for like 5 years.
Yeah, no such thing. Everyone just says something.
I know. And so that's what I mean when I said earlier, like, I think everyone's sort of flipping their house because you are going to sell it eventually. And so you should think about what are some things, plant that tree or things that are going to be, advantageous to you when you go to move. But, so I was having children. I had 3 children between 2006 and 2011.
Okay. So you're staying at home with them.
So I was a stay-at-home mom, which, was not for me. And so I was very interested in getting back in working. I love to work.
So you've been flipping like most of your career.
Adult life, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
What would you like? How should somebody get started here in Chico? Or your average price? Like you got to get a property for 2 to 350 to be able to flip something. So what would you advise somebody who's looking to start doing that? Like where should they get the money? Maybe.
Yeah, I would say save your money.
Yeah, just save.
You save your money. I do think there's more opportunity now with 3%, 5% loans.
Yeah, if you're buying as a primary.
Yeah. And I think that is how I got started. I was buying a primary home. So the lending is a little bit more lenient, and it's how I was able to take my time, learn, fix up a house. And I was doing it on average a year and a half, but that's still quite a bit of time to go around and fix up all the stuff you need to fix up in your house. Yeah. And so much of it is just elbow grease because most people walk in and if it smells or it's yucky, they can't see past the dirt or the grime or the yucky carpet or whatever. So, I think I said earlier, like the dirtier the better for me, because then that decreases the amount of people who are interested in that house by a factor of 1,000.
Yeah. Literally.
So I would say be open to rolling up your sleeves and being willing to kind of live in a bit of a remodel state for a while, which is a lot easier to do without kids, although I've done it a ton with kids.
Yeah. Or continue staying in your rental if you can afford it while you fix up the other house. We did that.
Yeah. So there's definitely options, or if I had it to start all over again, I would be, maybe buying a house with like a little in-law unit in the back. So you could live in the in-law unit and fix the front house up, and then you're getting some kind of rental income, as you have that house. So
it's a good idea too. Far and few between, but if you're keeping your eyes out.
More now than ever, I think, because of the less restrictions on those, but yeah.
What about like, how do you find a good deal?
Brandy.
I know. What's the magic for that? Because it is hard.
I think you have to be ready. And I think you have to be educated. And I think on the last podcast, I mentioned Warren Buffett and the advice that everyone always asks him. And the second piece of advice he gives everyone is educate yourself.
Yeah.
In every aspect, in every way that you can, so that when you are in the looking for a house or in the escrow process, you're not like, well, it needs a new water heater. What's that going to cost? That kind of thing. Yeah. Because for sellers, they don't want you to figure that out during the escrow process. No. They want you to know that you're going to close on the house. Yeah. And so I would definitely say educate yourself, get a good home inspection, and I think just be patient. And look at different times of the year. I mean, and you guys have talked about on your podcast that certain times of the year are slower. Yep. And while there might be a little less inventory, there's also less buyers. So you might be able to get a house in December when a lot of people aren't really looking and, get a good deal.
Yeah. And then if the timeline worked out and you were buying it to flip it and put it back on the market, it'd be ready by spring. Yeah. So it's a deal. And
then Brandy, working with her, I feel like she's always out there saying, hey, I have a client that's looking for. And so your realtor can really help you in that process of looking for and finding the good deals and helping you kind of expand your mind of like, oh, I didn't want to be on this street because it's busy, or I didn't want to be over here. And I've bought houses and lived in houses where 10 years before that I thought I wouldn't want to. And then I lived there. I'm like, oh, actually, this is pretty nice.
It's not too bad.
It's a busy street, but I'm super centrally located. Yeah. So the cost benefit. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think to your point of like you're working with Brandy through all the years, I've talked to quite a few young investors who think, and I'd be interested to see what Bigger Pockets have to say about this, but who will just contact 5 to 10 realtors and say, this is what I'm looking for a deal. If you find it for me, I'll work with you. But I might not sell with you. Like they're not willing to sign something saying that if you find it to me, I'll also sell it with you. And I think that it's more beneficial to have one realtor that you work with. And then like you and Brandy have created in a sense where everybody knows that Brandy has a flipper that she works with and will bring deals to Brandy. I bring deals to you guys. Like everybody's willing to do that if it it would help that realtor out too, or help that realtor's client out. Whereas if you're working with a bunch of different realtors and they all know that and they know you're not committed to them, they're not going to work as hard for you.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think, different markets are different.
True.
And so in a big market, I could see where that could be an effective strategy.
Right, because you have maybe a special agent, like specialized agent per large neighborhood.
Right.
Kind of thing.
And, there are definitely some agents that are hungrier than others.
Yeah.
And so you might find that agent that you connect with and they're going after it as hard as you are. But in a smaller community, and Chico's definitely like a tertiary market versus like Sacramento, a secondary, and San Francisco being a primary.
Right.
Word gets around fast. It's a small community.
Yeah.
You guys all, the realtors, go to real estate conferences together. You interact with each other all the time. And I did that a little bit in the beginning and did not find that to be very effective at all. The only time I have found that to be effective is prior to my relationship with Brandy, or I've bought a couple of places in Idaho where I didn't really know anyone and approached and found a house that I wanted and went to them and said, I'm not working with a realtor. You will get both sides of this deal. I want to buy this house. Here's my terms. If you want to represent me and your client, let's get this done. That has been effective.
Like you went to the listing agent.
I went to the listing agent and said, this is what I'm willing to offer. If you want to write it up, you get both sides of the deal. And that is, and I'm not crazy lowballing them, but that can be an effective way to do that in a market that you're maybe not as active in.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. But if you're going to continue buying homes in that market or Idaho or wherever you are, then it's good to up with somebody.
It's definitely, to me, relationships, I couldn't do, in fact, it was funny, a year or two ago, I was approached by HGTV to audition, or, they're like, we think you'd be great for this new concept of a TV show we have. And the concept was, let's show people how difficult flipping really is. So we'd like you to move to a place that you've never been, like, Denver.
Yeah.
And we want you to basically start from scratch. And I'm like, what do you mean start from scratch? No investors, no relationships. And I was like, I have no interest in this because this TV show will fail.
Yeah.
You will not be able to do this without relationships.
No.
And he's like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, I'm only successful at what I do. You're only successful at what you do because of the personal relationships that you have and that you've built, and that the trust that people have built up in you.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And so I was like, no, thank you. No, thank you. I'm like, if
Not
you
worth
find
the
something
risk.
else, let me know. But
Here in Chico.
yeah. Or, a concept that would work, but that concept, not to be a Debbie Downer, but that concept will never work.
No, because nobody wants to watch that. No one wants to watch somebody fail.
So you're going to go door to door asking for investors?
Yeah. No. It's not interesting. It's not like, what's the word? Like flashy.
It's not realistic.
Yeah.
All of my investors I've had personal relationships with, or a personal relationship with someone that they have a close personal relationship. Like, oh, well, I'm not going to invest, or I'm going to invest with you, but I also want my son to invest with you, or my cousin, or whatever. And that's how I've been able to do what I do.
And those things take time. It's like, God, everyone these days just wants like an overnight success and a quick money. And I think with social media and TikTok and all these people my age trying to advise people how to make millions, I'm like, you're 30 years old. You don't know. I don't know.
No, I did. So, I told you I went to my first real estate conference, and it was a bigger pockets conference.
Yeah.
And
some 30-year-olds know what they're doing.
I basically just refused to go to any seminar where the person hadn't been doing real estate for at least 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, totally.
Because I'm like,
they have to have a track record.
Yeah. Oh, it's been really easy to do real estate from 2012 on.
Right.
Of course. But you have to be able to weather the down.
2008s.
Yeah. The 2008s, the 2022s, the,
80s.
The 80s, all those different things. You have to be able to weather that. Yeah. And so I was selective about who I listened to.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And, Brandy and I have invested in a group in which there's like 4, I don't know what I would call them, like the main people that had this group of investors. And I'm sure they have a name that I know. Yeah. But anyways, one of them is he's young, early 30s, but he had I don't know, 100 and something doors by the time he was like 25. So someone like that, and he's proven to us by the way he speaks and the videos he does, and like our conference calls with him, that he actually knows what he's talking about.
Right.
So there's that like needle in a haystack person, but most of the time, these guys on TikToks, I have people send them to me all the time. It's like, what do you think about this? I'm like, I think that guy's 25 trying to tell you how to invest your money.
Well, again, it comes back to education, right?
Yeah.
And to educate yourself and be able to tell who knows what they're talking about and who's just sort of a social media person.
And be able to differentiate those things and be smart, be selective. Okay, so our videographer, media manager Courtney has a question about Airbnbs. So you have experience. How many Airbnbs have you had? 4 or 5 or more than that?
Yeah. I mean, it's fluctuated, but right now there's 5
total that you're running, or that you're having somebody run for you.
Mm-hmm.
Again, hiring out for that thing so you can flip.
Definitely hiring out for that.
That's another.
I'm like, I mean, I could see if I was gonna like come up with this like portfolio of Airbnbs and I wanted that to be my job, but I don't want that to be my job.
Airbnb management is a full-time job.
It is absolutely a full-time job.
So do you have any there's so much to say about Airbnbs, but 2 cents on it? Should people start getting into that right now, or has that ship sailed? Did we miss the boat?
No, I don't think that you've missed the boat or anyone's missed the boat. I mean, I think there's always going to be fluctuations in the Airbnb market. I think it's pretty incredible how it's transformed the way we stay out of town.
I mean, VRBO has been around longer than Airbnb has.
Right.
But I remember when that was just like a list like this.
Right. And so, no, I don't think that it's too late. I think that the idea that you're going to completely pay for a house and make all this money with an Airbnb may be a little lofty, depending on the area and the situation and things like that. Because I think that what we've seen over the last few years is certain areas just getting saturated.
Right. Like Chico a little bit.
Chico, which is just a kind of a small town with a university. We have a couple places in McCall, Idaho, which is a resort town.
Oh, so you have a couple Airbnbs there. How many? 2?
3.
3. And do they do okay? Like, do you have pretty good
stays? They do well. We did not invest in them thinking that they were going to be, one of them is, hey, let's buy a retirement home and a home that we want, not a retirement home.
A home in which you want to retire.
Yeah. Let's buy a house in the place where we want to retire and let's let someone else help partially pay for it.
Okay.
And that's done really well. Let's take a cabin that hopefully 4 weeks out of 52 and it's sitting vacant for the other 48 weeks. So let's take that and make some money on it.
Right.
And cover some of the costs of these other places. And in the meantime, there was, in the process of all that, I found this condo that to me was very cheap. And I was like, I'm just going to buy this condo, fix it up and Airbnb it. I paid cash. I don't have to have a return on that investment. I'm just, part of the return on the investment isn't going to be on a monthly basis. It's going to be the 5 years, the appreciation.
And that's the same in California. It's like we have just steady appreciate.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. And then I have a couple in Chico that are just, steady, and things kind of slowed down because so many people got in the market. Yeah. My Airbnb manager told me that at, 1 month last year, September or something like that, 300, and by November we had 400. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
Yeah. So
well, the city's making good money on that.
Yeah. But I mean, a lot of people are thinking, oh, this is just going to be a cash cow.
Yep.
And it's probably, so then you're going to see a little bit of atrophy. There's going to be people who realize, oh, wow, I'm not going to be able to make my payment just based on this. And they're going to pull their houses and go back to long-term rentals.
Yeah. And then by then it's like they've put in all this money to furnish it and make it cute. And then all the effort to make it an Airbnb. Yeah. I mean, I did the same. I have the duplex right here down the street and it's close to the hospital. So I thought, okay, when I move out of my unit, I'll make it either an Airbnb or like a 6-month, whatever, like a nurse's rental or traveling OT or whatever. And I ran all the numbers. I got estimates on furniture. One of the main issues was it's a downstairs unit. So I was really nervous about reviews on like the kid upstairs running around, So it's like, how can I mitigate that noise? And at the end of the day, I would have made, or I do make more money as a long-term rental than putting in all that initial investment into, I think I was going to spend $30,000 just to furnish it and then do the insulation in the ceiling. And Airbnb. I mean, it just wasn't worth it.
Right.
So I think people really need to list out those costs, really understand how much it costs to furnish these days. Like you can't get a dresser for like
Right.
less than $800 these days, you know? So all those costs have gone up.
Yeah. And I think that, it's not going to be rented full time.
Yeah.
People
vacancies.
usually overestimate how much they're going to rent it. Don't take into consideration, you're now paying PG&E and cable.
Yeah. I had to look
and
into
internet
solar.
and all that kind of stuff. Management. Insurance is different for Airbnbs, generally speaking. And now a lot of places, Tahoe is a great example.
Yeah.
A lot of places are putting restrictions on those. And that's, not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it's good and bad, depends on what side of the fence you're on, but it is taking away a lot of long-term rentals and driving those costs up.
True.
But I think that we're going to see a correction in that as people, like I said, realize, okay, maybe this isn't quite what I thought it was going to be.
Right.
For me here in Chico, I did that during the pandemic because I got a little skittish about the fact that California was willing to just let people not pay their rent.
Yeah. That
And
makes sense.
at that time I had, 7 or 8 rentals in Chico. And I was like, I can't afford $30,000 in mortgages if everybody just decides they're not going to pay their rent.
Yeah.
So, it did give me some flexibility. Like I can sell this house anytime I want.
Yeah.
And it's staged and that kind of thing. So
Yeah. That's true.
you kind of have to just take it with your own situation, but
Yeah. And be discretionary. Have you looked into buying a rental, like a vacation rental in other countries, like Mexico, like Cancun or something like that?
I have not. Of course, I, like everyone else, has salivated over the $1 houses in Italy and Spain and been like
$200K for a beach
damn
house?
kids, they're holding me back from my future.
Not for long.
Yeah. But no, I haven't. And, even I know many people who have places in Hawaii and DC and places like that. And we looked at that. But at the end of the day, even like with Idaho, I was like, okay, we have millions of dollars invested in places that we are not putting our eyes on very often.
Yep.
So we kind of had to pull back and make a commitment like, hey, we're going to get out there like every other month just to look, because
So Dave Ramsey says.
yeah. Well, and not all Airbnb management companies are the same.
Yeah.
I have an independent here in Chico. She's amazing. I think she does one of Brandy's. She's absolutely amazing. And she is on top of it. And I have 5-star ratings, and I used a national company because I just didn't know any local companies in Idaho. They were horrible. Absolutely horrible.
Bummer.
There was no customer relations, no feedback when we got negative reviews, not very good cleaners. And it's all about the cleaning.
Yep.
Because you can have like something out of place, or you don't have a can opener, but if the place isn't clean, you're going to get bad reviews.
Yeah. That's the first thing people say is it was dirty.
Yeah. So then I had to pull back and reevaluate. And so then I spent days and weeks like looking through all the Airbnbs in that area and who was using, and then interviewed all these companies and finally went with a larger local company, but a local company. And the change, we just made that change a couple months ago, and the change has been dramatic. When I go on Airbnb, I see our houses, like they pop right up,
God forbid. Yeah.
Yeah. And the reviews have been great, and they're a
Good.
super host. And so the management, I would say, can literally make or break you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Make or break it.
Did you ask the realtors you've worked with over there for any?
I did. I did. I think the feedback's always mixed, but and not to say every national company is bad, but I do think having that local hands-on is super important. And the national company that we went with was just kind of like turn and burn. And it was like, oh, once we have your listing, we don't really care.
Yeah.
And then once I started to see that happening, I kind of talked to my local Airbnb person and some people who are more active and, are going to the conferences and doing all that kind of stuff, which I've never done. And they go, oh yeah, that, yeah, it's kind of well known in the industry that particular company is kind of just turn and burn.
Oh, interesting.
And I was like, oh, okay. So
go
again,
local if you
education.
can. Yeah, education.
Education of
the more you know.
So, and talking to people
Yeah.
and, finding out like, what do you think?
Thank you.
Good job.
It's been fun.
Happy Friday.
I know. Happy Friday. Cheers.
School's out.
school's out for summer. Dylan can watch the puppy. I can get back to work full time. And we'll hopefully see you on the next one.
Okay, sounds